Hi, this is Lisa with Holland Designs Crochet. I've been asked to demonstrate some of the rows of one of my patterns called the Housewarming Throw. This pattern begins with a chain of any length, so I'm just going to make a chain here. And I'm using a DK weight yarn and a K hook. This particular yarn, I purchased this here in New Zealand. It's called a Stallion DK weight yarn. Very shiny, very soft, so I really love this yarn. It's the same yarn I used for the sample, but the sample I did in a dark gray or silver. So this yarn I actually used for the little curls, the hair on the dolls that I demonstrated recently. So you can see that in some of my other videos, but it's a shiny, soft DK weight yarn. And I'm using a K hook. And so a K hook is a little bit larger hook than you would normally use with DK weight, but that's part of the design element. Using a larger hook creates really beautiful drape, and so that's what we've used for this particular pattern. So I'm going to just start demonstrating for you. And row 1 is simply working half double crochets in the second chain from the hook and each chain across. And I've made a bit of a swatch here for you, so obviously not a full-size row, but I'm just working across so you can have an idea of how this pattern works. So half double crochet is one of my favorite stitches because it's very easy to use to create knit look textures. And a half double crochet has basically 3 loops that are visible on the wrong side or on the opposite side of the stitch. So I'll show you when we get to that point. When we flip over, there are 3 loops that we can work in. There's a top loop, 2 top loops, like the front and back loop that you're normally familiar with. You see that also in single crochet, double crochet, etc. Most stitches have 2 loops, front loop, back loop. But the half double crochet has also a lower loop or a third loop, and we use that loop in this particular pattern to create this beautiful knit look ribbing. So on the next row, row 2, we will begin working in lower loops only. And so I'll point that out to you. So into row 1, we simply do a chain 1 and turn. You can see our row of half double crochets. And so here it is, front loop and back loop on the top of the row. On the face of the work, you see another lower loop right below the front loop. And so in the pattern, when it says work in lower loops only, these are the loops we're referring to. These lower loops, which are on the face of your work below the front and back loop. Say, I will begin showing you now row 2 of the pattern. Okay, row 2, working in lower loops only. We are going to do a knit look rib stitch. The first stitch of the row is simply a single crochet under the lower loop only. And then the knit look rib stitch is again also worked in lower loops only. It is insert your hook under the loop of the previous stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert your hook in the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook, and then you simply pull through the 2 loops to create your knit look rib stitch. You repeat that across, always working under the loop of the previous stitch, and then the next loop, and pull through 2. And that can become quite a quick motion when you get going. Just try and show it to you a little bit more slowly. And this is creating ribbing on the opposite side of our work. So I will finish this row and then come back and show you the opposite side and show you what we do for row 3. And actually, the end of this row will also just be a single crochet in the last loop of the row. So this row of knit look rib stitch begins and ends with a single crochet in the first loop and a single crochet in the last loop of the row, and everything else in the center of the row is the knit look rib stitch, worked in lower loops only. Okay, this is the end of row 2. I thought I'd just show you the very end of it, so simply working a single crochet in the last stitch of the row and chain 1, turn. So I've got basically 2 rows of ribbing that have been created already, and you'll see that even more visibly as we continue with row 3. So row 3 is simply working in the back loops only. We work half double crochet across the entire row. And as we do this, it helps that ribbing to really be more noticeable. You can see that ribbing there being created. So this particular pattern is simply a 2-row repeat. It is a row of knit look rib stitch in lower loops only, followed by a row of half double crochet in back loops only. And we work that repetition until we have created a section of ribbing on the face of our work that is the measurement that we want. For the sample, I had 9 rows before I then worked a 10th row, which was one that caused the ribbing to switch and be on the opposite side. So I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like as well later and how that's done. But that's all we do to create this ribbing, is those 2 rows that are being repeated. And they're actually quite quick and easy to memorize. And at the end of every row, we just do a chain 1 turn. So this is the end of row 3. Okay, so that's our first 3 rows. You can see how beautiful that's looking, how that knit look ribbing is very pretty. And as we turn it over, you can see there's no ribbing on the wrong side. I've worked a few more rows, as you can see, and you can also see that I've got sections now where the ribbing is on opposite sides. And so I'm just going to show you how we switch the side that the ribbing is worked on. So I've just worked a half double crochet back loop only row, which is a row 3. And then to change the way that the ribbing is appearing, I simply work another half double crochet in back loops only row. So rather than working the knit look rib stitch in lower loops only, as I normally would, instead I'm working 2 half double crochet back loop only rows back to back in a row. So as I do that, you can see the ribbing switches back again to this side. So that's how we create the ribbed sections in this pattern. And the swatch I'm showing you here doesn't have the correct number of rows of ribbing. So the pattern has you working more rows, but I just worked fewer so I could quickly show you this demonstration. So that's how we do that. We just work 2 of the half double crochet back loop only rows back to back, and that reverses the repetition, reverses the appearance of the ribbing. So I'll just finish this row, and then I'm going to show you just briefly how the edging is worked on this pattern. So this pattern has very pretty lacy ruffled edging that is worked around the entire blanket and is worked in short rows. So I will show you a little bit of how that's done just to give you an idea. Okay, so you can see how we've got ribbing here, non-ribbing, and then again the ribbing is beginning to appear, and the opposite is on this side here, non-ribbed, ribbed, and this will be a non-ribbed section. So it just creates sections of ribbing. It's very pretty. Okay, I've worked a few more rows. You can just see how that looks now. But I'll go ahead and show you some of the edging. And so the edging is worked in short rows, and the pattern itself began with a chain 22 for the edging. So I'll just do that one. It's 22. Okay, so you can see it's a long edging, especially compared to my swatch, isn't it? It's about the same. But when you have a full-size blanket, it's a long, beautiful edging. It ends up being very lacy and ruffled. It's very pretty. So chain 22 to begin. And then it says to single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So let's do that. We're working a single crochet, and then it says to skip one chain and then work a half double crochet in the next chain. And then you're working a front post half double crochet around the post of the half double crochet you've just made. So you're just simply working around the post of the half double crochet. And you repeat that across, basically single crochet in the next chain, skip one, half double crochet in the next chain, front post half double crochet around the post of that half double crochet you just made. So that's how it's creating a bit of a lacy texture. And you just work that across. So I'll just finish my row. Single crochet, skip one, chain, half double crochet in the next chain, front post half double crochet around the post. And when I get to the end of this row, I'm going to join with slip stitches to the edge of the blanket. And this is what's called a short row, so it's worked in a horizontal manner back and forth and then joined automatically to the edge of the blanket. And it's kind of a neat way to work an edging. Rather than working in rounds, you're working in these short rows. And so the edging itself doesn't have to be 22 chains to begin. You just basically need a multiple of 3 plus 1 extra chain to whatever length that you want your edging to be. It just needs to be, like I say, a multiple of 3 for the stitch repetition to work out properly. So I'll just finish my row here. Okay, so once I've completed the row, then I'm joining with slip stitches in either the next 2 stitches or ends of rows. So at the moment I'm working along ends of rows here at the side, but when you get to this side of the blanket, you'll be joining into stitches, which are the foundation loops, or if you're working across this side, you'd be working into actual stitches. So you're joining in the next 2 stitches or ends of rows, so you just simply work a slip stitch, and then you slip stitch in the next row, and you turn your work. And you're ready to work back along that row. So row 2, it says working in back loops only. You work a single crochet in the next stitch, skip 1 stitch, half double crochet in the next, front post half crochet around the post of the next. So it's basically the exact same stitch pattern that you worked, but you're working into actual stitches rather than into the chains. So single crochet, skip 1 stitch, half double crochet, front post half double crochet, and you're working back loops only, so it's creating not only lace and ruffle, but it's also creating a bit of a ribbing because you're working back loops only, and you've got some half double crochets on those rows. And of course this yarn and this hook is really what adds to the laciness of the edging, because it's very lovely and soft and lightweight. I think I actually made this blanket as a special request for my neighbor. She really admired some of my blankets that she'd seen, and so she asked me to make something like this. I think it was actually something else that she wanted me to make. It was another pattern that I'd already made, but I wanted to create something a little bit different, so I made something similar. I had another pattern like this. It was called the Palisade Throw. So I changed the elements of it. I changed the way the ribbing was done, and I changed the edging, but it was a very similar concept. So that pattern was, I think, in a crochet magazine, so that was why I wanted to create something for my own shop that I could sell. But we just continue doing that. So we did a chain 1 turn, and then we just do the exact same thing for row 3, back loops only, single crochet, skip 1 stitch, half double crochet, front post, half double crochet. You can see how this is a pretty edging, and it's fun to work as well. And it's a nice contrast to the ribbing that we've already worked for the main blanket. So I'll just complete this row and again show you the joins. So basically the joins at the edge of the blanket are what we place normally the chain 1 turn at the other end, and it moves your hook up to the correct height to begin the next row. And it's basically a join as you go edging. The nice thing about this edging is you could use it on pretty much any blanket. And also because it's intended to be ruffled and lacy, you wouldn't need to worry about it fitting specifically around the edge of a blanket, because it's meant to be a beautiful lacy effect when you're finished. So we just join with slip stitches in the next 2 ends of rows. Don't need to be very concerned about the placement, but just do your best with that. If you get it a little bit too tight at one point, or you a little bit looser, it won't matter. It's just basically covering the edging. So you see how pretty that is? And it's reversible, so this texture is the same on both sides. And so how this works is you'll work back and forth in rows until you get to the corner. And when you get to the corner, you'll make sure that you end with a row that has you placed out here at the outer edge. And then from there, to begin edging the second side of the blanket, you'll simply do a chain 22 going up this way, and you work back and forth in rows this way. And your joins initially will be in the edging as you're working back and forth up and down this way, and then you'll get to the point where you'll actually be joining to the edge of the blanket. So that's how the corner is made on the throw, and it's just beautiful. So hopefully you'll enjoy working this pattern. Hopefully this tutorial has given you a little bit of guidance, and some encouragement to give this pattern a try.